Hey, good students. So today we're going to have a little look at some mnemonic devices to help you remember some key concepts in economics. I call this, rather awkwardly, Mnemonic Economics, Part 1. Okay, so for remembering price elasticity of demand and price elasticity of supply, I want you to remember Trumps are shit. Okay? Say that to me one more time. Trumps are shit. Okay. So, what does that mean? What does that stand for? So you know from your classes that this is the elasticity of supply. So if we look at this diagram, we have very inelastic supply. And on this diagram, we have very elastic supply. So what does that mean? Our first diagram means that it doesn't really matter how much the price changes, the supply stays exactly the same. Okay, that's a kind of extreme version. But if you think about, say, the paintings by Picasso, for example, Picasso is dead. So it doesn't matter how high the price rises, Picasso is not going to produce another painting. Okay, well, let's move on, thinking about another good that's perhaps very elastic. If there's an increase in price, a very small increase in price here, there'll be a very large increase in quantity supplied. Now you can think about this in terms of maybe, say, cars, for example. There's lots of car companies around the world producing cars for all kinds of different prices. So even a small increase in overall price of cars will lead them to supply much more. Okay, the same could be said for other things like candy or toys or whatever. So the determinants of this, now this is the important one, this will come up in your exam probably, the determinants of price elasticity of supply. So if we think about them, so our first one in Trumps is time. Okay, so if you have an agricultural product, it's very much dependent on time. You only have a time to grow your crops over the seasons, and you cannot change this as you're growing the crops. Okay. Whereas with manufactured goods, you can quite easily change the production of one thing to something else. Say, for example, toys. For example. Next one is resources. So what are the resources used in these goods? Are they easily obtained? Are they readily available? That's another key point to think about. Next one is unused capacity. A lot of students get confused with what that means. But again, it's fairly simple. If I have a factory, I'm usually not using my full capacity all the time. So I can choose to produce more or I can choose to produce less fairly easily. If I'm a rice farmer, I really have no choice because my field is fixed and the amount of the amount of rice I'm going to produce is fairly fixed. So that's unused capacity. Mobility should be fairly easy for you to understand. How easy is it for companies to change where they produce those different goods? Okay, and again, the difference between a factory and a farm makes this very clear. It's not immediately easy. Say, for example, chocolate production. You cannot change chocolate production from the Ivory Coast in Ghana to, say, Scotland, because it just won't grow there. It's impossible to grow chocolate in Scotland. So the factors of production are not mobile, whereas factories can choose to produce goods in many different countries. Brazil, Indonesia, Japan, wherever. The next one, also important, is the good perishable? How long does your good last? If it's fruits, you only really have a few weeks before you have to put your good onto the market. Whereas if it's a manufactured goods, you can sell your goods over 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. Okay, and then the last one is the size of your market, and that's talking about producers, like how many other producers are there of your goods, and that will definitely affect whether the goods is elastic down here or inelastic. Now just think it through logically with these examples, and you should be able to get there. Okay, next is a shit, which is talking about price elasticity of demand. Now you may have learned some other mnemonic device, but a shit is the easiest one that I think I can remember, and all my students can remember. So again, we have the diagram. Here we have a good that is relatively inelastic. Now that means that in this case, if the price decreases a lot, the quantity demanded only increases by a little. And the opposite is true. So if the price increases a lot, then the quantity demanded only decreases a little. And that could be for a number of reasons. We'll just talk about it in 1 second. And the next diagram is showing an elastic goods, a price with elastic demand. Now that means that if the price decreases by a little, the quantity increases by a lot. The quantity demanded increases by a lot. Now the determinants of that, of elasticity, are quite interesting. So first example, advertising. Now we all have an iPhone, right? And we all think it's necessary. That's why the new iPhone is going to be extremely expensive. And that's because Apple know that iPhones are becoming increasingly inelastic. And certainly smartphones are inelastic. But we've been convinced this through very convincing advertising and marketing campaigns. Okay, next, substitutes. Does the good have a lot of substitutes? That certainly affects elasticity. For example, in this case where the good is very elastic, say for example t-shirts, black t-shirts. How many black t-shirts are there on the market? You can go down, you can go into town, go on the internet, search black t-shirts, you'll find thousands of different substitutes. Or even other substitutes, long sleeve t-shirt, shirt, all those kind of things. Making that good very elastic. That's why when you walk down the main street in whatever city or town you live in, you'll see sale, 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 cut price, 50% off. All of that shows that that goods that they're selling is elastic. Okay, now habit forming is an interesting one. Can you get addicted to that product? Okay, is it elastic or inelastic? Okay, my best example of this, of course, is smoking. So for your parents' generation, certainly your grandparents' generation, smoking was inelastic because many people were addicted to tobacco. So if you increase the price, if you increase the tax on tobacco by 50%, 60%, whatever, people are still going to smoke. Okay, and equally, if the good is not addictive, then it's very elastic. Okay, next, income. So, as your income rises, that will also affect the income elasticity. Are you going to buy more of the goods, or are you going to buy less of the goods, or is your demand going to stay the same? So with income, think of, say, gasoline. Even if I get $1,000 extra per month, I am not going to be spending a lot of extra money on gas, unless I buy a Hummer or something, which is unlikely. Yeah. So that can affect the elasticity. And the last one is, of course, time. So with the idea of gasoline again, I have a car, so I need to fuel it up every so often. However, if the price of gas doubles, triples, goes up by 5 times, eventually my behavior is going to change. I'm going to have to change my car to either an electric car, or I'm going to have to start riding my bicycle more. Okay? And that's time. So that is what you need to know for elasticity and the determinants of elasticity. So just remember, Trump's a shit. Okay, thank you.